It's confirmed that the Houston Rockets have some major interest in Dorian Finney-Smith, and now, because he is a free agent, the Rockets have been labeled as one of the top landing spots for him. Let's see what a deal could look like right here on a Rockets Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. I appreciate y'all joining us, and I've appreciated all the support we've been getting on our latest videos. The channel is absolutely booming, and it's because of you guys. So again, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We're covering the Rockets 365 days a year. Let's get right into today's video. DFS, he was mentioned on a previous video earlier this week, and we talked about him potentially being an option for the Rockets via trade. Well, now he is a free agent after declining his player option, and we got this from Jake Fisher of the Stein Line, saying, the Houston Rockets have emerged as a viable free agent landing spot for Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, this all comes from the Stein Line and says that the veteran declined his $15.4 million player option for the 2025-2026 season with the Lakers. Okay, so what exactly happens next? Well, there's a couple of different things. Technically, if we go back to the trade that we mentioned earlier in the week involving Cam Whitmore and Jock Landale, this could actually still happen. You see, there is somewhat of a sign-and-trade option potential here. Now, again, this was a trade that was mentioned earlier the week before DFS was a free agent. It seems as though Jock Landale is going to be a cut or a waive for the Rockets unless they find a trade partner. However, it seems as though they were looking to combine him with Cam Whitmore, which would make an $11.5 million salary, and then trade for a player who was in the $15 million range. Enter Dorian Finney-Smith, who again was making right about that much. Now, there's a couple of things to note with Dorian Finney-Smith, and I think he is a good player and would fit the Rockets pretty well, to be quite honest. But again, 32 years old, and he's a power forward. Like, that's an interesting position for the Rockets that we'll talk about kind of later as we get into this video. But 8.7 points per game, he's a pretty good defensive effort. His field goal and three-point percentage for a guy of his height, stature, and position are all really, really solid. So nothing really, like, bad with his game. I'm just not, like, screaming at the wind saying we need to sign him, because there's nothing that he's, like, so impressive at. It's kind of like he's good at everything, but there's not really anything that he excels at, is kind of what I'm trying to get at. So in that case scenario, what could the Rockets do? Well, Yossi Grossen had this tweet kind of talking about what exactly the Rockets could do. They could offer Dorian Finney-Smith the full $14.1 million mid-level exception, and they can give him more in a sign-and-trade, though, with a combination of Cam Whitmore and Jock Landale outgoing. Now, again, this could open up a multitude of teams that could start to maybe bring in Dorian Finney-Smith and make this trade a little bit more possible. So a sign-and-trade is an interesting option for this, specifically because he declined that player option to become a free agent. Now, obviously for the Rockets, they could easily just waive Jock Landale and still be able to go sign Dorian Finney-Smith. But in this situation, I think it makes more sense for the sign and trade, specifically because of the money going outward. And listen, DFS was making $15 million this year, or it was supposed to make $15 million with the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't know that he declined that player option specifically so he can go play for Houston for lesser money. I don't think that was the thought or the plan. I think his thought was, I can go make more than that on the open market. Hence why, if the Rockets are serious about getting him, it probably needs to start being a discussion with the Lakers saying, hey, we would like him, and we're going to give you somebody for him. We just need somebody to kind of work with us here in a trade and add a third team into there as well. So that's where it could kind of get a little interesting. Now let's talk about, if it does happen, what exactly DFS would mean to the Houston Rockets. And well, he's a pretty dang good player. He's played in the league since 2016. He's been pretty much to Dallas, to Brooklyn, to LA, and could come back to Houston. This past year had a really good season, averaging 8.7 points across two teams. He averaged 10.4 with the Brooklyn Nets in the first part of the year, playing 20 games with them. And honestly, this was one of his better seasons of his entire career. If you go back, he's been about 8.3, 8.4, even in the 7.2 range sometimes. The last time he was averaging close to this high was back in 2021, 2019 area, where he was in the 9-point range. And that's what he was doing with Brooklyn before he was traded to LA. It's an interesting situation, though, for LA because obviously they had Luka Doncic, they had LeBron James, but they had no center. And Dorian Finney-Smith, for as tall and as big as he is not a center. That is not his positional role. So he had an interesting window and a hole to fill for the Los Angeles Lakers. So in some ways, I think he would definitely perform better with a team like the Houston Rockets, who we already have an established Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams for our center position, so he could truly play power forward. But the thing is, I look at the Houston Rockets roster and I'm thinking, all right, he's a power forward, small forward. He could play both if we needed to. Our power forwards and small forwards are Tari Eason, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, and Cam Whitmore. If we don't trade Cam, maybe they try and trade him just because they want to have him. But is DFS just going to be the backup, like power forward? Because we know that our starting five is probably going to be a combination of Fred VanVleet, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, Amen Thompson, and Alperen Şengün. Not in that order. I would say Fred's probably the one, Amen's the two. The three has been labeled to be Kevin Durant, Jabari will be the four, and Alperen will be the five. And so in that case, Tari Eason will be the backup small forward, backup power forward. He can kind of play both. So are they going to bring in Dorian Finney-Smith to have 4 different small and power forwards to run through? Now, Kevin Durant is, 37 years old, so maybe it's more to get him off his feet a little bit extra in the season. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I look at the signing and I take a step back and wonder, what's the thought process? Like, why are they interested in a power forward? Because if I look at this, and I look at this depth chart, I'm thinking, man, I could use a guard, because Reed Shepherd didn't have that valuable minutes of last year. I mean, I'm not going to say valuable, okay? He played in not that many minutes is more what I was saying. Like he does not have the experience that Amen Thompson or Fred VanVleet has. And Aaron Holiday he's a veteran. He's a guy who's going to take up some minutes late in the game, but I'm not trusting him to be my number 2 point guard. So in that aspect, I'm looking for a guard. I'm not looking for a forward right now. Like I'm kind of curious to see what the thought process would be if they do sign him. How would they manage that? What would his role be with the Houston Rockets? And so that's why I go to my 2 cents and my thoughts. It'd just be an interesting signing. It'd just be such an interesting one, because I would have to hear Coach Ime Udoka and Rafael Stone kind of explain a little bit what is DFS's role? Why is he an important asset to this team? Why was he somebody that, even though he was put into free agency, they still were interested in? It's something that, I don't know, I'm curious about, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. Is there something that I'm missing that y'all think that maybe I'm not seeing fully, or are y'all just as kind of intrigued and maybe a little bit confused as I am? Because I don't see him, playing valuable minutes in some ways, and some $15 million is a lot to give out. And I'm not saying that he's not worth it, but I'm just saying that when the positional needs are what they are, if you're spending your last $15 million in free agency, or, I guess if you trade it away, you could have some more money, but if you're spending some money on a guy and you don't have too much in a positional need that I don't think is that big of a need, I start to wonder kind of, okay, how is this going to go? And don't get me wrong, he had a great season last year, and I would love to see him with the Houston Rockets. But I'm just intrigued, I think is the final thought that I have. I'm just intrigued to be why is a power forward the necessary thing? They've been talking about point guard or guard for the past 2 weeks leading up to free agency. As soon as they signed Kevin Durant, it was very clear from the Rockets, we are going to find a guard. And now you're going after a guy with the power forward label. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but either way, we'll keep track of this and make sure we stay up to date for you. And for that instance, if you're not subscribed, don't have notifications turned on, probably would like to do that now. Free agency is happening very soon, and signings are going to happen very quickly, so just be ready, because it's going to happen, and we'll have all the coverage for you on everything you need to know. For now, though, we appreciate you joining us, and as always, we will see you next time here on Rockets Digest. Peace out, guys.